welcome to Sectoral Wrap, an initiative by ICICI Direct. And today we're going to talk about two sectors which have been buzzing from quite some time now. One is the banking space, the BFSI space, and the other is the pharma space. First, let's talk about the BFSI segment. I have a special guest with me, Mrs. Kajal Gandhi, VP Research, BFSI, ICICI Direct. Welcome, Kajal.
Thank you.
Kajal, if I'm the first time investor in the stock market and I want to get into the BFSI space, what is the classification of this space and how do I go about it?
BFSI sector is a very large sector. Basically, banking and financial services includes everything on the space in the banking. So, if you look at, we have two sets largely. One is the lenders, one is the non-lenders. So, within the lenders are most talked about banks come in the picture. The NBFCs come into the picture. So, they are core into the credit side of it, and they are lending across. Whereas you have a non-lector segment and which has come up of late very strong, and which is the insurance sector, the asset management companies. You have these credit rating agencies, the brokerages. So these businesses which are not on the lending side but are in the financial services gamut will fall in the non-lender space.
Okay.
So you have companies which have recently listed in the non-lender space
Mhm.
and doing well right now in the markets. As we have seen, insurance companies have come into the Nifty recently,
Mhm.
and you have seen the returns also from them because they are balance sheet light, less capital intensive,
Mhm.
and they are doing quite good in the recent space.
Mhm.
But the banking space, as they are the largest pie on the overall Nifty, and they are into the most important part, their quasi economy, their replicate economy, because if
Right.
growth is there, banks are one which will participate in there. So
Mhm.
even they are right now back into action.
Mhm. Let's talk about the banking space only. And if we see the entire 1 year, in the 1 year, it has been a 15% gain for Bank Nifty. But if we see from the March lows of 2020, the index has gained more than 100%. So in the banking space, we have a valuation a gap between the private sector banks and the PSU banks. So how do you see this gap? And do you see this gap filling up? Because now lately the PSUs have been performing they have started performing because of the government's new policies for this space.
So if you look at private sector banks, they have been doing well. In fact, the post the moratorium and the correction that was seen in the stocks, they have come up quite strong even after that and have almost breached all their past record high levels. That's because mainly their balance sheets are strong, their capital positioning is strong. They all raised capitals in this pandemic period, and
Right.
at the same time their asset quality which have been reported now is completely under control. So
Mhm.
these things have kept the valuations rich for them, and in fact richer
Okay.
valuations have turned out to be positive for them. It is not that because they are rich they are not able to provide adequate returns on the stock market. In fact, what we have realized over time is that higher price to book multiples turn out to be positive because they give you higher book value, lower dilution in this
Mhm.
capital intensive business.
Mhm.
So that is why it's going to continue for the private sector space. When we talk about PSU banks, there has been a catch up which has happened because of definitely this government privatization initiative. But it will take longer, things will take longer time. But it is a step in the right direction. But we would rather still be watchful and cautious on the PSU banking space, and except for the larger couple of large PSU banks like SBI,
Mhm.
we would not be entering too much aggressively into the PSU banking space here. So valuations gap, I think, are here to stay. It's not going to disappear in a while. And
Mhm.
private sector banks with rich valuations will continue to do well.
Mhm. As you said, you are liking more of the private space for the banking sector. Now, what are your top picks in the private banking space?
So we like the larger banks like HDFC Bank, Axis Bank, Kotak Mahindra, which are doing well. So they are expected to be top beneficiaries of this entire market share gain, the credit growth which is expected to happen. I think one should stick to the large private sector bank, though mid-sized banks are also going to participate in the growth. But I think with the size and the benefits that they have, the larger banks look more attractive.
Mhm. Let's talk about the asset quality. This stress has been there for the banking space, be it more for the public sector banks than for the private banks. But asset quality concerns are now cropping up again. What do you have to say about it? What do we need to keep in mind before investing in any of these banks?
So if you look at asset quality problem, the PSU banks always had this in recent past. And because of this pandemic, there was a worry hanging on the private sector banks also. For the first time, everybody was worried even their NPAs will shot up like anything. But what we have seen right now is that the stress has come out to be under control. The overall pro forma GNP numbers plus the restructuring is under 2.5 to 3% for the private sector space. And even I think PSU banks have not reported a very large stress, barring one or two. Most of them are under this percentage to maximum 5%. So that's why I think the stress portion has come up quite well. Larger banks had made provisions in the last 3 quarters consistently to address this pandemic asset quality concerns. So the Supreme Court standstill status is keeping the headline numbers stable. But what I think is that even if now when the status goes away, the pro forma GNP numbers are looking to be a bit under control, and asset quality as a bigger worry is not as big as it was thought of.
Okay. If we talk about the insurance space, what's your view on the insurance space and your top picks there?
So from as I said initially, this non-lender space and this insurance space is quite good at this point in time because you want businesses with less capital, stronger balance sheets, and
Hmm.
insurance is one of that under penetrated area. You will have the growth in premiums of 10-12% consistently, at least maybe 15% for next several years, and this growth opportunity plus at the same time the awareness this pandemic has got everyone into about the health insurance requirement, the requirement of the term plans, the protection plans. So the growth is expected to be stronger, and also the what we expect is that this protection business going up will be margin accretive also for these companies, and that's why one should look at these companies from a longer term portfolio perspective. Having insurance companies like we prefer HDFC Life, SBI Life should be there as portfolio companies.
Mhm. Kajal, one question which is very relevant to the current times when we are seeing the 10-year benchmark yield, bottoming out and moving higher. Which gives us a perspective that the lower interest rate cycle might end sooner than what was expected. So, what's your view on that?
I think RBI looks quite determined in managing the borrowings of government and keeping the yields and inflation under control. So it may be possible you will not see lower rates. So it is possible you are going to stay around these levels for longer. So maybe lower for longer is what we should think, and we may not be going into a rate hike cycle anytime soon. It appears, but
Mhm.
yeah, there will be as the economy growth propels, and there can be then pressures of inflation or core inflation rising, and I think that time it will be the point to look for the rate hike cycle. It does not appear that in this scenario just because of the borrowings and the other factors it is going to be a rate hike. So it is
Mhm.
RBI which is controlling to some extent all these aspects.
Mhm. One last question from you, ma'am. Quarter three earnings for the banks have been mixed. For private sector banks, they have been very good, and for PSUs, it has been a mixed bunch. What do you expect from the quarter four of this calendar year, which is now, this financial year, which is now going to end?
So growth-wise, we are seeing as expecting the credit momentum to gradually pick up, and March is also a busy season. So credit momentum should be slightly picking up. But at
Mhm.
the same time, as the asset quality pressures are receding, the provisions number will come off, and which will help the bottom line. So I think the profitability numbers can improve quarter on quarter, boosted by the lower provisions largely. because most of them have provided in the last 3 to 4 quarters. Maybe NBFCs may have to go for 1 or 2 more quarters for provisioning, and we prefer retail-based NBFCs where the quantum can be of risk will be lower. So that way, the best private sector banks are provided for. So provisions being lower should aid earnings. You can have retail NBFCs where the growth starts picking up and they can be back into earnings. And the other businesses, as such, if markets are doing well, the AMCs are expected to start gaining back their AUM and the earnings. So largely, I think markets bouncing back at the same time, economy recovering. These will be beneficial for the entire BFSI as a space.
Thank you, Kajal, for being with us. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Now let's talk about another buzzing sector, pharma sector, and I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Siddhant Khandekar, lead analyst of Pharma ICICI Director. Welcome, Mr. Siddhant.
Thanks, Kitu. Welcome you.
Siddhant, if we talk about the pharma sector, calendar year 20 has been spectacular for the sector, and we know the obvious reasons. COVID was the first of them. What are the other reasons that really helped the pharma space doing better?
Yeah, so before COVID-19 outbreak, I think the sector was in the kind of a recalibration mode. During CY16 to CY19. So this was in response to scores of setbacks in the US and price control and other disturbances in the domestic market, which were acting as strong headwinds. And most of the players were recalibrating capex, their leverage position, as well as the R&D spend in order to optimize capital utilization. The outcome of all these measures were anyway expected in CY20.
Okay.
The pandemic turned out to be the watershed moment for the pharma sector when most of the manufacturing sectors couldn't operate to full capacity due to lockdown in most part of the world. Pharma and healthcare services, being the top layer of essential services, remain exempted everywhere. And barring few supply-related disturbances, besides lower MR activities and lower clinic footfalls, no major impact was seen on the business continuity plans. So COVID-related critical drugs and API supplies across the globe further vindicated the capability of Indian pharma, while earning expansion going ahead would be the outcome of pre-COVID recalibration. We believe the multiple expansion has gotten boost due to pandemic, to sum up. So to sum up, stable earning visibility, de-stressed balance sheets, healthy free cash flow generations, and ability to deliver products in the time of crisis are some of the key attributes for Indian pharma.
What are the different themes one has to keep in mind before investing in pharma space?
So the sector offers different themes with different target areas for growth, such as domestic branded formulations, mainly driven by MNC companies, banking on steady domestic growth and brand stickiness for doctors' prescription. Then we have blended models having both domestic and exports franchisee and focusing mainly on branded generics front-end models in the domestic as well as exports markets. Thirdly, we have the CRAMS player, the so-called CRAMS player, the CDMO player or the B2B player. To put it in simple way, and API opportunities, especially in the backdrop of China Plus One theme, which is basically prevailing in the global parlance. So this also includes the integrated exporters with 75 to 90% kind of a vertically integrated model from intermediates to formulations. Then fourth is the US heavy blended players diversifying from earlier US only to US and others kind of a strategy. And lastly, we have healthcare players, that is hospitals and diagnostic chains. So these are the 5 categories. Now, if I were to put in terms of preference in terms of from investment point of view, so we prefer B2B or CRAMS players among others. So our preference has a base of significant visibility capex undertaken by these players. So they have a clear-cut visibility, then only they are going to put the money, so which is a significant amount that we have seen in the last few quarters. And besides the usual cost advantage and legacy capabilities, the post-COVID scenario would further strengthen the already strong order book scenario. So which is why I think companies like Divi's, Syngene, Suven Pharma, and Laurus Labs from these sub-segments are our top picks. The second preference will obviously the domestic pharma companies, especially the MNCs, with strong growth track in their power brands or top brands. We call it a power brand. So then major new launches, including innovative launches, besides strong balance sheets and comfort on the corporate governance front, are some of the key attributes for MNC pharmas. So from this table, we like companies like Abbott, Sanofi, Pfizer, and Procter & Gamble Health. Thirdly, in terms of pecking order, I think we prefer blended models, having both domestic as well as export franchises and focusing mainly on
Yes.
branded generics, right? And front-end models in the domestic as well as exports markets. So for these companies, India remains a major growth engine, and similar kind of branded generic models is being followed by these companies in other export markets other than US, of course. So from these group, we prefer companies like Agenta Pharma, Ipca Laboratories, Cipla, Torrent, and Indoco. So these are the picks from this category. Lastly, I mean, in terms of picking order, this is the last preference from our side for investment purpose. There would be US heavy blended players, diversify from US only to other geographies as such. Obviously, because I think US remains a key market, but I think there are a lot of key factors that one has to take into consideration. So some of them have also ventured into complex export generics such as biologics, biosimilars, injectables, and oncology also. So these players do have Indian franchisee, but I think the major capital employed is for US business. So from this table, we prefer companies like Sun, Biocon, and Aurobindo. And lastly, we have hospitals, as I mentioned, so which have demonstrated significant agility to handle COVID as well as non-COVID patients during this difficult time. And hospital as a theme was already prevailing before even the pandemic, which with the kind of waning capex, improvement in ROC, EBITDA margins, etc. And besides traction from new hospitals and medical tourism, I think they have done exceptionally well to control the capex part, which was basically the demanding requirement from the investors as such. And again, the government's endeavor, of robbing the private players via the PPP model, via various schemes also bodes well for these companies in the future. So from this table, I'm sorry, we prefer Apollo with added traction from pharmacy business as well. Then there is Narayana Hrudayalaya, then Aster DM. So these are our topics from this sector.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the production linked incentive. We have a second PLI which has been announced recently. How do you see this auguring for the industry? Because now you have two PLIs. One initially was for API and intermediate. Now it is for the pharmaceutical formulations too.
Yes.
So how is it going to impact the sector as such?
So I think I'm sorry, the scheme is also expected to bring around 15,000 crores of investment in pharma. I think earlier they were just focusing on APIs for obvious reasons, because I think there was a kind of a shortage from China, and I think the earlier need or the earlier requirement was to address that problem first. But now gradually they have also included, and they are also talking about the formulations companies as well. And in fact, the formulation players in their conference calls also have mentioned clearly that they will expect the scheme will also come into formulations. I think, although it is still early days, but I think the important aspect is the government has recognized the capability of Indian pharma manufacturers, whether it is API, whether it is formulation, or whether it is intermediate. So I think slowly and surely this scheme is going to cover most of the facets. So whatever requirement, because I think most of the players have already, as I mentioned in my opening remark, they have already calibrated their capex. So from here on, if they want to put new capex, definitely they will get some amount of incentives from the government, and that to the period is also sufficient. From 21 to 29, I think it's a good amount of good enough period, to plan yourself and put your capital accordingly. So yes, this bodes well. Definitely, these are early days, but I think as the scheme progresses, as the new notifications, start coming in, I think we'll see more and more amount of investment from formulation player as well. So in global parlance, size-wise, India is still pretty small. I mean, in the ranking, if you see the value-wise ranking, India ranks around 13th or 14th in terms of value, but in terms of volume, it is at third. So that you can basically, gauge the potential for the for incremental capex and an incremental scope as such. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Can you please elaborate on some kind of a risk that one should keep in mind before investing in this sector?
Yeah, for this sector, I think there are typical generic risks. I think on the domestic front, the growth of trade generics or generic generics, because typically almost I would say 85 to 90% of the medicines that we consume, we always consume it on prescription basis, and the prescription in India are always drawn on brands. So if at all there is any change going ahead, although it is difficult this thing, but I think one can expect that as a risk. One can pursue that as a risk. Let's say, for example, if there is a prescription, the government mandates a prescription based on generics name rather than the brands. So this is a risk for Indian branded players, especially the MNCs. So this is one aspect for domestic pharma, and I think on exports fronts, besides quality issues, especially in the US, the currency fluctuations in emerging markets, that also is a kind of a significant risk, and I think that. And then there are regulatory aspects also in other geographies, the semi-regulated geographies, I would say. There are a lot of changes, and I think again you have to incorporate those changes in your manufacturing plan, and accordingly you have to take a time as such. So I think these are all typical risks. Plus, there is a risk of tenderization also in exports markets, because I think what they are doing is instead of distributor-driven model, they are mainly focusing on tenderized model. So government will float a tender, and I think the lowest bidder will take out the tenders. So this is also typical risk in emerging markets, especially. But that said, I think we believe these are more of a common risk factors, and I think most of the companies have witnessed this kind of risk in the past also. So I don't think that should emerge as a significant headwinds for sustainability. Yeah.
If we talk about the Q3 earnings, that were a mixed bag. While growth recovered for most of the companies and formulation market, the US business listed a weakness across the board. How do you expect the for Q4 to be for the pharma companies this time?
So I think based on the trajectory that we are witnessing, the Q3, I think there was a good amount of recovery, especially in the Indian markets, because I think we have what the commentary that we are getting from the management is, there is the MR activity is coming back to normal. The pre-COVID level, I think almost 90% is there. So I think that will get normalized by Q4. On the US front, yes, I mean, I think since there was a kind of an extended, lockdown in US also, and I think hospitals were still treating most of the COVID patients. So I think the companies which are, supplying to the wholesale market or the institutional market, especially the hospitals, so they are still facing some issues. I think what they are saying is it will take at least a quarter or two to recover. So let's say we will only witness full form of recovery only in FY22. So Q4 might not be a kind of so more or less it will reflect the Q3 scenario only. So, but I think the recovery in US will only pan out from Q1. I think because most of the companies will also start, venturing into, as I said, I mean, the complex part, the complex generics, the biosimilars, and stuff like that. So I mean, so it will take time. US will take time, but I think what is significant traction is basically coming from other exports markets. So typically, I think this is also plus point for India, because I think most of the governments, most of the companies, most of the distributors have procured especially the COVID goods from India. So we have again demonstrated our capability in times of crisis. So whether it is a kind of short notice or whether it is a kind of bulk supplies, so I think most of the companies are in a position to enter into that kind of contracts. So you might see this as a continuation going ahead also, even post pandemic also. So that kind of possibility is there. So we might see ex-US exports growing significantly from here on, and then you will also have the API supplies also streamlining going ahead. So overall, yes, I mean, except US, I think more or less we can see a good amount of traction.
If you talk about Nifty Pharma Index, 1 year returns at plus 55%, but year-to-date returns, if we see, they are around down by 6%. So this year so far, pharma companies have not been in favor. So if one has to really invest afresh in this space, which three counters or three companies would you suggest now?
So in terms of, and I think we discussed that also when we were pointing out to our sub-segments. So in terms of pecking order, definitely I would go for Divi's Laboratories, which is basically from France sub-segment, as I mentioned. So definitely in terms of visibility capex, in terms of capability and the balance sheet and the margin profile, everything, if you take into account, and we can expect good amount of compounding also by FY23. So we expect 20% plus top line growth on a CAGR basis in Divi's Laboratories, plus some amount of margin expansion and the kind of new contracts that they are are going to execute rather. So Divi's remains our top pick. Secondly, from second staple, as I mentioned, the blended the MNCs. So from MNCs, our top pick will be Abbott Laboratories, Abbott India rather. And from third staple, that is the blended model, our top pick will be Agenta Pharma. So in terms of picking order, I would say Divi's, Abbott, and Agenta would be our top picks.
Thank you, Siddhant, for being with us and sharing your views.
My pleasure.
It was very nice speaking to you.